Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boys.
Hi.
Mary.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Victoria. I'm very happy to bring you on. Yeah, you're welcome. So please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. Give us an idea of how long you've had kidney disease, and and how you came to find out. How you whether it's diabetes or lupus, or how you found out from the doctor that you have kidney disease. All right.
Okay. Well, I'm 32 years old, and I live in Waco, Texas, right smack dab in the middle of Austin, Dallas. And I was actually 10 years old when they diagnosed me with polycystic kidney disease. And polycystic kidney disease means that my kidneys were underdeveloped, and then they formed cysts. So it's just basically my kidneys were a pocket of cysts. I was 10 years old when I started losing a lot of weight. Was very tired, but couldn't go to school. And so they started out with sending me to a neurologist because I was having migraines and like fainting spells. And the neurologist didn't seem to think that was the cause of the problem, so he sent me to a nephrologist at Cook Children's in Fort Worth, Texas. And they diagnosed me with polycystic kidney disease. And typically, polycystic kidney disease in juvenile patients is a very slow-moving disease. So originally, they told me, oh, you may need a transplant in 20, 30 years. You won't need one right away. So they decided to see me every 6 months to kind of watch the progress of it. And within a year, my kidney function had gone down to about 8%. And at that time, they said, we didn't think it was going to progress this quickly. You're going to need dialysis right away. So I started peritoneal dialysis when I was 10 and a half years old. I did peritoneal dialysis at home. Yeah, I was very young.
Wow.
They didn't think that it was going to progress that quickly, but I've never met anyone else. So if there's someone or someone out there, I've never met anyone else who had such a progressive case of PKD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually when I meet people, they develop it later on in life. So
right.
I'd like to meet someone who has juvenile PKD.
Uh-huh.
So I did peritoneal for about 3 years at home. But in that time, I got peritonitis.
Okay, you did. Wow.
And that's not, usually people have it once or twice, but I kept getting it. So they decided to put me on hemodialysis. But because I was only 12 years old, there was nobody in the Central Texas area that would do hemodialysis. So I had to go to Austin to get dialysis. So my mother, my grandmother, and I, we drove 2 hours back and forth to Austin 3 days a week to get dialysis. And so obviously I had to homeschool.
Okay, you're right.
My grandfather was very adamant that we find a doctor that would let me do dialysis here in Waco. So he found uh, a dialysis clinic here, and he kind of put the hammer down and was like, "Look, my granddaughter needs dialysis, and it's too much for my grandmother and my mother to be going back and forth to Austin." So I started dialysis at an adult clinic here in Waco when I was 14.
Okay. Wow.
And
14 still. That's very
I was
young.
14. And so I received my first transplant in 2003, November 2003. I was 15 years old. And that transplant went very well, but because I was very young, I was very naive, and I had, for so long been told, oh, you can't have pizza, you can't have soda, all that good stuff. So as soon as I got my transplant, I went wild. I thought, oh, hey, I can eat what I want. The transplant did pretty well for a few years. I was maybe 18, 19, so about 5 or 6 years after I received my transplant, they told me, hey, it's going to the beginning stages of kidney failure. And to kind of go off on a little bit of a side story, at that time, I had always been told that I would never have children. And that was a big hit to me. I always wanted children. I always wanted to be a mom. So I was 19, 20 years old. I'd had my transplant probably about 6 years. And my husband now, boyfriend at the time, and I decided we wanted to try children. So I went to the doctor and I said, hey, I would like to, not right now, but eventually have children. What do I need to do to maybe get that, to try and do that? And the doctor told me, you can't. You'll never have children.
Wow. How did that make you feel when the doctor said that?
The doctor told me, and these were his exact words, he said, it's not God's will for you to have children. Perhaps
you got to be kidding me.
Adopt.
He said that to you?
He said that. And I know that doctor. I still see that doctor. I know now, years later, I know now that he didn't mean it that way, but to a 19-year-old girl who's always been told she'd never have children, that probably wasn't the best thing to tell her.
Sure.
And I'm the type of person who, if you tell me I'm not going to do something, I'm going to go ahead and do it.
All right. Good for you. You.
We found a different doctor at Baylor Scott and White in Temple, which is about 45 minutes from Waco, right outside of Killeen, Fort Hood area. And I saw that doctor. He kind of helped me get my labs under control, and I lost some weight. And my husband and I got married in 2012, November 2012. I found out I was pregnant on our honeymoon, and I miscarried on November 10th, 2012, and I miscarried on Thanksgiving.
Wow.
But after that, I knew it is possible.
Yeah.
It can be very dangerous, but it is possible. So I got pregnant with my son the following April, and it was a very, very difficult, very easy pregnancy, but very difficult in the
delivery.
I have diabetes, I have high blood pressure, I have kidney failure. So I saw a high-risk OB-GYN at Baylor Scott White and Temple, and he suggested that I go and see my transplant doctor and kind of get a rundown on how this pregnancy is going to go. I had my transplant at Texas Transplant Institute in San Antonio. And so that's where I went. I went back to tell them, hey, I'm pregnant. what do I do? And I went in there, and the doctor there told me I was probably about 9 to 11 weeks pregnant, something like that. And the doctor says, you need to have an abortion.
What?
Okay. Well, that's not
Wow.
enough for me.
And this is a different doctor.
This is a different doctor. This is a different doctor, and he says, you need to have an abortion. And I said, well, that's not an option for me, so what do I do?
All right, so hold on, time out. So, Victoria, help me understand, why is it that you've got two doctors that have given you direction that, you know, having a baby is not a good idea? So is it because of, you know, help me understand, like with the PKD or kidney disease in general, or what was the reason that they were giving you that this was a bad idea and that they advised against it?
They didn't really give me a reason. I know that PKD is a recessive gene. So I was told that there's a 50-50 chance that my children could get PKD as well. Apparently, my mother and father both carried a recessive gene. Mm-hmm. So I got PKD, but my sister did not.
Do you have any relatives that have PKD?
No. My father died when I was 6 years old, but as far as we know, he did not have any type of kidney problems. Mm-hmm. My mother, she never had any type of kidney problems. Nobody in my family, on my father's side or my mother's side, that we know had any type of kidney failure that was related to PKD. I do have a distant cousin that had kidney failure. He was a year older than me. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he didn't have PKD. He had kidney failure from a different disease.
Wow.
Yeah. So to be honest, the doctors never really gave me a reason why I shouldn't have children. It was just it's too dangerous, and I assumed that because at the point that I got pregnant, my kidney was already, my transplant was already starting to fail. So I assumed that the reason they didn't want me to have a baby was because pregnancy would be too hard on me.
Okay.
And it was. It was. Yeah. It was definitely difficult. So I went to see this doctor, the transplant doctor at Texas, and he sat me down and he even called my OB-GYN while I was in the room and talked to him and said, I advise against this, you should not have this baby, it's very dangerous. And he got off the phone and he told me you need to have an abortion. Well, I'm not going to. So what's the next step? And he said, if you don't abort this baby, you're going to die. And if you don't die, that baby's not going.
What?
And I walked out of there brokenhearted.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And terrified. And the first thing I did was I called my OB-GYN and I said, what the transplant doctor said. And he got on the phone and he said, when you came to see me 3 weeks ago, I asked you if you were willing to do this. I asked you if you wanted an abortion, and you said no, and you said you were willing to do whatever it takes to have a baby. And I said, yes, I did tell you that. He goes, so why would what, he's my language, he said, why would what my soul says change your mind? And I said, well, okay, then I guess we're having a baby.
Wow.
I mean, that doctor, OB-GYN, was a god. He did everything that he could to make sure that I was healthy and that the baby was healthy. Mm-hmm. I did dialysis. I did have to do dialysis during pregnancy. I did dialysis 4.5 hours, 4 days a week. The clinic here in Waco would not take me while I was pregnant, so I drove the 45 minutes to Temple 4 days a week and did dialysis 4 days a week, and came back home and continued to work full time right up until the baby was born. was 10 weeks early to the day. He was exactly 10 weeks early. He was born at 30 weeks, and he was born on October 22nd, 2013. He was 2 pounds, 14 ounces, and he is 6 years old.
Wow.
Absolutely perfect.
Absolutely.
He was in NICU for 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He was in NICU for 5 weeks just to make sure that he could put on the right amount, that he could put on enough weight. And he was in an incubator and on oxygen for the first couple of weeks. But after that, he was perfectly healthy.
Wow.
You would never know. You would never know that he is a preemie.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy and very smart. And he takes very good care of mom.
I bet he does.
Very good care of mom. So, anyway, so after my son was born, my kidney transplant did fail. He was born in October. By December, they told me that my kidney transplant had failed. They put me on a kidney transplant list right away, like while I was still in postpartum.
Really?
Right?
So,
yes, I was still in the hospital.
Elizabeth Sterling had a question, Victoria. She's asking if you're for PKD, if you're recessive or dominant for PKD. Have you been told whether you're recessive? Okay.
I've been told I'm recessive. Yeah.
All right. If I remember correctly, Elizabeth is recessive too. Okay.
Yeah, I believe I'm recessive. And as far as we know, my husband has no record, no gene. He doesn't carry that. As far as we know, he's never been tested, but he does not carry that gene as far as we know. So, my son is perfectly healthy, and I don't think we're going to be having any more children. So, I'm recessive.
And Chris is asking, how was your pregnancy, or how was your experience with dialysis and pregnancy?
It wasn't too bad. I never had morning sickness. I didn't have morning sickness, but with the dialysis,
you didn't either, Mary.
I did it. No, I never had. I didn't get sick until right before I went into labor. That's the first time I ever got sick. But I did have preeclampsia, and that's what caused me to go into labor. I did the dialysis 4.5 hours a day, 4 days a week. I've heard that some people do it more.
I did it that long too.
The dialysis. Yeah, I heard that some people do more. I didn't do as much as some people. We were even able to go on vacation at the time. I took the dialysis machine with me while I was pregnant, and we were able to go on vacation at the time. I was able to eat. Some dialysis don't allow you to eat during dialysis, but my clinic allowed me to eat because I was pregnant and I would get sick if I didn't. And my mom would take me to dialysis, or my mother-in-law took me. So
okay,
I had someone to help me.
Mm-hmm. And how
my mother would sit there with me during the treatment and make sure everything was okay.
Oh, okay.
Did you have your dialysis through fistulas or central line?
Yes, I have a fistula. I've had my fistula for 22 years.
Wow.
I've had my fistula, yeah.
How long? How long have you had your
fistula? Never had any. I've had it, well, okay, maybe not 22 years. I'm lying. I've had it since 2001.
Wow.
2002.
Yeah.
So
I've got 3 that never worked.
I'm sorry?
I had 3 put in that never worked. So I had a central
Holy cow. Holy cow.
The gentleman who sits next to me in dialysis now, he just got his fistula put in, like, I think Thursday. And his looks really well. He said the first one he got never worked. My fistula worked right away, and I had never had to have any type of corrective surgery until last July. That was, and what they did because my fistula is very curved.
Yes.
They had to straighten it out.
Okay,
but
so
other than that, I never had any
and the
problems.
whole time you've only had one corrective surgery, and the whole time you've had your fistula.
Yes, and I've been on dialysis 3 times.
Yeah, that is just I don't hear that very often. You know, usually there's one you have to have a different one put in, and there are multiple issues, for this, that, or the other reason, and that's
They did put the chest catheter in.
Yeah.
So when I was pregnant, I hadn't done dialysis in 10 years.
Yeah.
So they did put the chest catheter in for a week or so, just until they could make sure my fistula was working properly.
Get it going
and
again, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was working just fine. So they took the chest catheter out, and so I had I did do dialysis during the pregnancy, and then after the baby was born, they waited a few weeks to see if my kidney would kind of recover, and it didn't. So I started dialysis January 2014, and I did hemodialysis while I was working, and then I transferred to home hemo and did that for a few months with a brand new baby at home. And I did home hemo at night while the baby was asleep, and we had a family member that would stay to help us. And so let's see, I started dialysis in January, and I received my second transplant in June.
Wow.
June 17th, 2014. I did not wait very long at all.
No.
I did not. Both of my transplants were cadavers. My first transplant in 2003 was a 16-year-old suicide. That's all I know about 16 years old.
Okay.
I tried to contact the family, but they didn't want any contact. And then in 2014, my second transplant, I was told that it was an older gentleman, I believe it was a male, that killed in a car accident. He was, I think, in his 60s. So this was a bit of an older kidney. I was told that he had no medical problems that would have been a problem for me to receive that transplant. However, that transplant only lasted 4 years. That transplant failed last January 2000.
Last January.
Yes. It had started to fail probably June, July.
Victoria, so my question is that and man, wow. I mean, that's all. Yeah, I don't even know where. Each journey is so unique. It's like a snowflake. I mean, it's. I mean, your son is a miracle, and so there are just so many questions, and there are so many questions that some of our kidney warriors that are watching have already posed, and so I'm asking anybody else who's watching now to please comment below, ask questions about her situation. Let's give her support, and if you have PKD, I'd like to see PKD kidney warriors comment. I'd like to see some comments from people who have, like Lena, fistula for 20 years. Or no, 20 minutes? Oh, no, she said 20 minutes. Okay, I thought 20 years, then I read it again. Work. My bad. Yeah.
We're going to claim it. It'll work.
Yeah. And then, so please, I'd like to see some more comments from people and that have some common ground, because that's what's so great, again, about our community is that we can find some common ground. So please comment below. But anyway, Victoria, so when you found out, okay, that your kidney, all right, was failing, okay, how were you feeling physically, and how did that match up with the doctor's direction that that you were going to need, to go back on dialysis? How are you feeling at that point?
So I think there's several answers to that question. Losing a lot of weight, was migraine, fainting spells. I didn't know what was wrong. To me, I was always a chubby kid. I was always like a little overweight. So when I started losing weight because of the kidney transplant, I thought of it or because of the kidney failure, I thought of it as, oh, I'm stretching out, I'm losing weight, and now I'm not going to be a chubby kid anymore.
Yeah.
So I didn't really, to be honest, as a kid, I did not notice the difference how I felt before. And when the doctors told me I needed to start dialysis, I didn't understand the capacity of that.
Okay.
I didn't understand how much my life was going to
change. Yeah.
So going into the first surgery where they put in my peritoneal catheter, I was 10 years old. Going into that surgery, I was perfectly normal. I remember going back for that surgery, and my mom, my grandfather, my grandmother were all standing there crying, saying, "It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine." And I'm like, "Okay, guys, I'll see y'all back in a little bit." It didn't bother me, I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
And I talked to a lot of people on the Facebook group who are scared and say, their lives have completely changed and they have a really hard time dealing with the mental and emotional stress of having kidney failure. And I've never known anything. This has been my life. I've had kidney failure my entire life. I've never known anything different. If I didn't have kidney failure, I wouldn't know how to act. When my kidney started to fail, my transplant kidney, my first transplant, when that started to fail, I was pregnant. I was so overjoyed with where I was going. And, my husband and I prayed about it, and we said, I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to do whatever it takes to have this baby.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have time to think about how I felt or my kidney was failing, having to go to dialysis.
So it sounds like you were focusing on the joy and the miracle that was in your life.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I was tired all the time, just like everybody else would be, but I was focusing on the fact that I was going to have a baby and that I was going to do whatever I had to do to have
when they told you not to.
And they told me not to. And I've thought about it 100 times that I should take a picture of that beautiful little boy and send it to the hospital.
Yes.
But I never did. I should have, but I never did. And so when my second transplant failed, now that's when things started to change. They didn't tell me that I was going to be dialysis. I told them.
You told them.
I told them. It failed probably, it failed in 2009, probably of June 2018 is when it started to fail, started to go downhill. My BUN, my creatinine was going up. And so, they said you're going to need to, they upped my medications. They told me I was going to be careful. My blood pressure was very, very high. My diabetes was completely out of control. I've had type 2 diabetes since I was 18, 17. But by that time, it was completely out of control. And so, and I was not, I'm going to be honest, I was not very disciplined. I was not very disciplined at all.
So how do you mean that? You weren't very disciplined as far as being compliant or?
Being compliant. I did not watch what I ate. I did not exercise. I hated taking insulin. I would always forget. I would either forget to check my sugar, or at the time I really couldn't afford insulin, so I would get treatments. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was horrible.
It was like another thing you had to do.
Right. I was not compliant at all. And I think a big part of that probably contributed to my second transplant failing. They did tell me that the doctors did believe that kidney transplant, some of the doctors, I mean, I saw a bunch of different doctors trying to get second, third opinions on the kidney failure. And some of the doctors did tell me that they thought that it could have been an underlying cause that second transplant failed. But I know that a part of it
Because of what?
of my non-compliance.
Okay. All right. All right.
So when that second kidney started to fail, I was nauseous a lot. Going back to your question on how I felt when that started. I was nauseous all the time. I would get dizzy spells. I wasn't really tired a lot. I'd have to stop what I was doing, like if I was cleaning house, or if I was at the grocery store, I'd have to stop what I was doing and just sit down and kind of catch my breath.
Were you very compliant with your transplant meds?
Yes, now that I was always compliant.
All right. All right. Like,
Yeah, never missed
always
it.
been compliant. It never missed my transplant.
Mm-hmm.
I'd missed it maybe
good
once
for you.
or
Good for
twice,
you.
and they would always tell me, "Hey, you missed." You know, they can tell in your labs if you missed it. And they were like, "Oh, you missed your medication." They can tell in your labs you missed your transplant medication.
Oh, yeah.
So all you guys out there taking transplant meds, make sure you take them because they'll catch you.
They called you out on it, huh?
They will call you out.
A long line of medications that I have to take morning and night, and it's a lot. But
Yeah.
never miss.
I think at
Never
the most,
fail.
Never miss.
At the most, when I had my first transplant, right after my first transplant, I was taking like 46 pills a day.
Yeah.
46 pills?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
close to
Oh
that.
my gosh. Are you kidding me?
The farther you go, it tapers down some, but when I first
Yeah.
got my first transplant, it was like 46, 47 pills a day. One time I
Man, I'd have to get out a calculator to count all those every day.
It is a job.
And that's one thing.
I'm not great at math.
It's a job putting them together. You have to get them all laid out.
Job putting them.
Right, that is a job.
That's one thing I have always been really good about is I do keep up with my medications. I know what each I know what each one looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm
generic name and the brand name.
Yeah, everything.
Yep.
Everything. I know the generic name. I know the brand name. I know how to spell it. I know.
Oh, right on.
Usually we know them better than the nurses who ask us, "Are you taking this and this?"
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
So that one does this.
It's a lot. So I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted. When that first transplant or when that second transplant started to fail, I got to the point to where I couldn't eat. I was vomiting. So when I went to the doctor probably a couple of weeks before, he said that my GFR was, I don't remember what he said my GFR, but my function percent was at 12%.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
And I told him that I'm not. I think Alice said, no, I think you've got a little bit more time. Okay.
The glomerular
so I think you've got a
filtration
little
rate.
bit more time before you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back a couple of days later and I said, no, I think I need dialysis. And he goes, well, let's see how far we can get without it. Let me increase your medication. Let me do this. So he tried that, and at my very worst point, I had gone 14 days without eating. I was
14 days.
Let's go.
14 days without eating. I could not eat
sick.
I couldn't even hold water.
You must have been very sick. What was your family?
Sick.
What was your what were your family and husband? What were they all thinking when you weren't eating well?
My husband and my in-laws were very concerned. They were telling me, this isn't right.
Sure.
You need to go to the doctor. Mm-hmm. And I kept putting it off.
Yeah.
And my son, actually, and that's what happened. My son had started a new school. Mm-hmm. And so I told my in-laws, I told my husband, I told my grandmother that as soon as I get Joshua started at this new school, I'll go to the doctor. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get through that. I had to see my baby on his first day of school. So I went and I dropped him off at his new school. It was the first day after Christmas break. And I went and dropped him off on his first day after school. I left. I got in the car. I started to head to work. Passed out. I'd gotten real dizzy, real weak. And I passed out behind the wheel, and I kind of woke up, and then I realized I was driving into the yard.
Wow. Are you kidding me? Man.
I stopped the car. I called
How
my mom.
scary
and I
is
said, I need
that?
to go to the hospital. It was really scary, you know, but I'm very stubborn. I am. I'm
Yeah.
really stubborn. I kept saying, oh, I can make it, I can do it. So I called my mom and my grandma, and I said, I've got to go to the hospital. I think I just passed out. And so my grandmother, I still drove myself. I
Yeah.
drove myself to my grandma's house, and then my grandma picked me to the hospital. And I was there for a couple of weeks, and I said, guys, I need dialysis. Like, I can't keep going like this.
Yeah.
You know, the doctors tried to convince me to take more medication.
Take more medication.
Yeah, I knew it was time.
Yeah.
So was this the time where it started to really set in? Was it really starting to sink in at this time that this was real, and you know, and that this was going to have like a big impact on your life now?
I will say that I have had kidney failure more than half of my life, and I've been through dialysis 3 times. I've been through 2 kidney transplants, and it's over 20 years. I have never been more scared in my life than I was last year.
Yeah.
And I think, and I can tell you guys now, and you moms out there, I know that the reason it's so hard is because now it wasn't. Now I had a baby. Yes, you know, I know that my family has something happened to me that
I'm not hearing a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm probably getting too quiet. I knew that a big part of why it was so hard because I had a baby, had a little one.
Okay.
So it wasn't just I've got to take care of myself.
It wasn't just you. Mm-hmm.
Right. I've got to be there.
Yeah.
I know my husband, and I have an excellent support system. Don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful support system. My in-laws, my grandmother, my mom, my husband are very, very supportive.
That's what
I don't listen, and I'm stubborn. They push me.
Yes.
But I think that's why this is so much harder than every other time before, was because I wanted to, I needed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought of going back on dialysis, him seeing me on dialysis,
Mm-hmm.
him seeing me go through that was hard.
Wow.
I've always seen, and I know that this is not the case, but I've always seen dialysis as I don't like being told that I can't do something.
You don't like what?
I don't like to be told that I can't do something. I don't like for people to pity me or feel sorry for me.
Right.
Okay. All right.
You know, I don't like for people to pity me or feel sorry for me or say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this."
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sorry that I'm going through this, because this is my life. This is the life that God gave me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's, and sometimes it's very hard to see that. It's very hard to see God's plan, but I know there's a plan. And when I was going through this, a lot of people said, "Well, I'll pray that you get better, or I'll pray that you feel better, or I'm sorry that you're going through this." And I told people, I said, "Don't pray for me. Don't pray that I get better or that I overcome. All I ask is that you pray for strength. Pray
Pray
that
for
God
what?
gives me strength
Mhm.
I
Strength.
wanted
Okay.
people to pray that God would give me strength to do this
Yes.
Mhm.
and give my family strength
Strength.
to see
Sure.
me over.
Okay.
You know, I know that even if I were to get another transplant, eventually it's going to fail. You know, it
Mhm.
may be a long time, but eventually, you know, I will always have this. I will always have to take medication.
Well,
Right.
yes.
I will always
Mhm.
be a little bit different than everyone else.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
this is my life. This is the way God made me, and it takes me a long time to accept.
Those are the words that I
Uh,
need to hear every day too.
I think a lot of people do. When
You know, I agree.
I think when you're going through a disease like this, people, your family and your loved ones don't always understand how you feel. They don't
But they
always
do.
know why you're tired all the time,
Yeah.
why you
Right.
feel sick
You're
all the
right.
Thank you,
time,
my friend.
why you have to take all this medication.
It's a
I'm very
full-time
lucky
job.
that it is, and I'm
Totally.
very lucky
It is.
that my family does understand. I've met a lot of people who say that their spouses or their family don't make them feel bad or make them feel like a burden. And I'm
Mhm.
very blessed that my family is very understanding and very
Right.
accepting and very supportive. To
Awesome. That
everything.
is so good to hear. That is so good to
It is.
hear. Yeah.
It is.
I had a very scary incident last year. I started dialysis last January. I had been on dialysis for a few months, and I started having some pain in my second transplant, where I had my second transplant. I
Mhm.
started getting these sharp pains, and I told the doctor that I thought I was going into acute kidney rejection. And I
Mhm.
had somebody ask this question. Acute kidney rejection is different from kidney failure.
Right.
My transplant kidney had already failed, but
Mhm.
my body was now rejecting the organ. My body was trying to kick it out.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I told the doctor, I said, I think I'm going into acute kidney rejection, and he agreed. So he had me hospitalized, and he wanted to do a nephrectomy of my transplant kidney, where they removed the
Mhm.
kidney.
Okay.
So they did that. They did a nephrectomy to remove my second transplant kidney.
Mhm.
And after the transplant, they decided to treat me with a epidural. I'd never had an epidural. I didn't get an epidural when I was pregnant. So they did the epidural, and the first time they missed. And then when they got it in there the second time, it took them a very long time to get my pain under control. I mean, I was in recovery for 8 hours, and my family, the doctors did not even tell my family what was going on the whole time. They were sitting there in recovery for 8 hours, wondering what was going on afterwards. So it took them a long time to get my pain under control. So I was in the hospital for a couple of days recovering from the surgery, and I was up one night in the middle of the night. I moved or I twitched something, and I got this super sharp pain up my back and up my neck and my head.
Wow. So.
And I thought that it had something to do with epidural.
Mhm.
So I called for the nurses, and they came in, and they did everything they could to kind of get the headache under control. And so I was told later that that was a spinal headache
A what?
from the epidural. A spinal
Wow.
headache from the epidural, I
Yes.
guess.
Mhm.
I don't know. They never really explained it.
It can happen.
So
Have
afterwards,
you ever heard
I
about that,
tested.
Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I heard that happens when you get a spinal tap too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So after that, I kept getting these headaches and this pain in my neck and my head. And so the doctors couldn't figure out why I was getting this pain. And I kept telling them it's because of the epidural. You need to remove the epidural.
Mhm.
And nobody would listen to me. And so they said, well, maybe it's meningitis. How did I get meningitis?
Yeah.
So they tested me for meningitis. They tested,
All right,
and
all right.
everything kept coming back negative.
How frustrating was
said,
this
just
for
take-
you?
I was so frustrated at that point. My feeling was, dude,
Yeah,
we just kept getting the runaround.
yeah.
And so I finally told the doctors, we just need to get the epidural out. So they finally took the epidural out.
That's what I should have
But
done.
I was still getting the headache. So they kept giving me all these tests. They tested me for an upper respiratory. They tested me for the flu. And everything was negative. But then the doctor came in and said, we're going to go ahead and treat you with an antibiotic just to make sure there's no other infection.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I can understand that. Well, she decided to treat me with Rocephin or ceftriaxone.
With what?
Ceftriaxone is it's Rocephin or ceftriaxone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very strong antibiotic.
Yeah.
All right, all
And
right.
I have been allergic. I have been allergic to Rocephin since I was 11 years old.
But you told them that.
And this is the medication. And they knew that. It
They
was
knew
in my
that?
record. They knew that I was allergic.
Okay, but
The nurse came in and said, we're going to give you this Rocephin. And I said, no, I can't have Rocephin. I'm allergic.
Uh-huh.
And so the doctor called and said, well, when did you find out you were allergic to it? I said, I was 11 years old. And they gave me Rocephin for a kidney infection they'd given me Rocephin for the peritonitis.
Okay, for the peritonitis. All right.
Yeah.
They had given me a Rocephin for the peritonitis, and my legs started to swell really bad. And so they said that I was allergic and I would get edema from the Rocephin. So I told the doctor that. I said, no, I cannot have Rocephin. I'm allergic to it. And they said, well, when did you find out you were allergic? I said, well, I was 11, and my legs were swell. And he said,
Why do you think they weren't listening to you?
Because they're stupid. I'm sorry, that's rude and that's ugly, but
But it's honest.
That's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Because he comes to me and he says, well, it's been a long time since you've had this medication. I think it will be okay.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, okay, doctor, I'm trusting you, but you need to keep an eye on me. And I told the nurse, I said, you need to keep an eye on me.
Yeah. You have to be your own advocate.
If my legs start to swell, you're going to have to stop Rocephin. And I told the nurse that before she gave me the first dose. And even my grandmother said, you're not supposed to take that. And I told her, I know, but I already told the doctor. And the doctor said, okay. So they gave me the Rocephin. And they started the Rocephin on a Thursday. And I was getting 2 rounds of Rocephin through the IV every day. I had dialysis Friday morning. By Saturday night, I was incoherent. I started having cycles of seizures. I would go into a seizure and then I'd come out and then go right back in.
But you were fine through dialysis?
I was fine through dialysis on Friday, but by Saturday, I didn't get dialysis Saturday or Sunday. So by Saturday, my body was I was going into severe toxicity from the Rocephin.
All right. Mm-hmm.
And so the Rocephin had an effect on me that it started putting me into seizures. And because they were continuing to give me the Rocephin and I wasn't getting the dialysis,
you weren't clearing it out.
I was basically being overdosed.
Because it wasn't getting cleared through dialysis.
Because it wasn't getting cleared and I was allergic.
Gotcha.
So I started having seizures nonstop. I started having hallucinations.
Wow.
I was incoherent. I remember waking up. My grandmother was there Friday night. Friday night, I felt perfectly fine. I felt good. I said, Grandma, go home, get some rest, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. So she went home. She came back Saturday, and I was having these seizures and these hallucinations, and I woke up. I remember waking up and saying, because when I was having the seizures, I was getting these dreams and these hallucinations that I was dying. I had an out of body experience. I could see myself. I could see the doctors.
Wow.
I know this sounds, it sounds insane, and I've heard people tell these kind of testimonies, and I've always thought these people are crazy, but this is really what I saw.
This is really what happened, yeah.
I saw myself in the bed. I saw doctors over me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was seen, and people are going to think I'm crazy, and I don't want to say this on public video where everybody can see it, but I thought that I was seeing the apocalypse. I thought that I was seeing. It was like I was coming out of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then I saw this big explosion,
Mm-hmm.
and then I felt like I was, I don't know, in outer space. It was black, and I could see stars, and it sounds so crazy. It sounds crazy,
No.
and I know people are probably going to message me and tell me how insane I am, but that's what I felt like I was seeing. I felt like I was seeing the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up at one point, and my grandmother was sitting next to me, and I said, "Am I alive? Am I alive? Am I alive?" And she's like, "Yes, you're alive. You're awake." "No, I died, Grandma. I died. I was dead." And she said, "No, yeah, you're fine. You're awake. You're alive."
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she told me that, I grabbed the phone and I called my husband, and I said, "I have to tell you that I love you, but I'm going to die. I'm not going to make it out of it. I'm going to die here." And as soon as I called him, he and my mother-in-law jumped in the car, and they made that 45-minute drive in 15 minutes less. And they were right there. And by the time they had gotten there, I was incoherent. I had gone back into, I don't know.
Had anybody at the hospital decided to put you on dialysis right then and there?
Wow.
Nope. No.
This is a great question, Mary. That's a great question.
They had taken me to ICU. They thought that I was stabilized. They took me back to my regular room. And they even told my husband, because my husband had called to check on me because I wasn't answering my phone. And they told my husband, "No, she's fine. She's okay." They did not tell him that I had been taken to ICU.
They didn't tell him?
No, they didn't tell him I had been taken to ICU until after.
Why?
And so anyway, they took me back. This before I had all the seizures and stuff. They had taken me back. I was in a regular room. They thought everything was okay, and then I started having seizures.
But still, you had missed a day of dialysis, so that
right.
I
right
don't really know. It's all those 3 days are a complete blur. The only thing I remember is I do remember waking up and telling my grandmother that I had died. I do remember calling my husband and saying, "I love you, but I'm going to die here. I'm not going to make it out of it."
Okay.
And I don't remember anything other than that. I don't remember anything.
You don't remember anything other than that?
For the next 2 days. My husband said that they ran all these kinds of tests. They did a EKG, they did an MRI, they did CT scans of my brain. They did, I don't remember what it's called, but where they did like a sleep study to see what my brain waves were while I was out.
EEG.
All right.
He said, and I've seen a video of it. My mother-in-law had a video of it. I've seen a video. I was awake, but it was like I wasn't there. My eyes were open, but she was trying to talk to me, and I had a completely blank stare. And, they would snap over here, and I wouldn't turn. They would lift my arm up to try and test if I could control my limbs, and I would drop. I couldn't control it.
Was that because of all the toxins in your body, and your body wasn't reacting well, wasn't having the right responses?
I've gone through. Yeah, it was because of the toxicity.
Yeah.
So there was some type of damage. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
Well, neurologically, everything was being
Your
flooded.
equilibrium, the equilibrium was off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
I couldn't.
I mean, they should
My
have
eyes
just.
were open, but I couldn't respond. Right? Yeah, exactly. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't respond. I had. It's like I wasn't there. And so they stopped for a second. I think Sunday they stopped for a second, but they
Jeez.
still couldn't figure out why I was incoherent.
Mm-hmm.
So they were supposed to dialyze me Monday morning, but they didn't want to dialyze me and not know what was going on.
Oh.
And then I guess something clicked. Something clicked, and they said, "Oh, maybe we should dialyze her and get this out of her."
Wow.
And so I finally went into dialysis Monday night. And I got dialysis Monday night, and then I got dialysis Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday night, I was awake, but I still wasn't sure that I was alive.
Wow.
I thought I had really died. So it was a funny story. So I remember my husband being next to me, my mother-in-law being there, and I remember my son sitting on the edge of the bed. And I could smell my mother's perfume. And
you could smell their perfume.
Mm-hmm.
I could smell her perfume, and so that's how I knew she was there.
Yeah.
That's how I knew that I wasn't
awake.
like, right. That's how I knew I was really awake, because I could smell her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like Monday night, I think Tuesday, and then Tuesday night, a lot of my family started coming to visit, and I was somewhat awake at that point, and I kind of knew slowly what was going on. And so I remember, like my aunt and my grandmother and my grandfather, so my dad's parents, came to visit, and I didn't think they were really there. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't seen y'all. What are y'all doing? So, I mean, I still wasn't sure that what was going on was really going on.
Okay.
They should have checked on the half-life of her second too, because that's how long it takes to get out of your system.
Right.
Good
that's
point.
What I thought
Very good point.
And so anyway, so by Wednesday, I was slowly getting back to normal. Again, I hadn't eaten in like 2 weeks, so I had to. They put a feeding tube down, but even though I was out of it, I didn't like it. Angie tube. They put the Angie tube in, but I didn't. I was out of it, but I didn't like it, so I yanked it out.
Really?
Even though I wasn't like really.
Really?
I wasn't really like conscious. I wasn't conscious.
Oh my gosh.
So I just remember them sticking it in, and my mother-in-law was like, "Vicki, don't touch it. Vicki, don't touch it." And then I just yanked it out.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh.
So they said, "Well, we're gonna have to put it back down unless you can feed yourself." And so I had to feed myself. I had to like basically learn how to use a fork again and feed myself. So it's crazy. Like Monday, I was completely out of it, and by Saturday, they sent me home.
Wow.
And this was how many months ago? It's like
they were in a hurry to get me out of that hospital. I'm sorry?
How many months ago was this?
This was last June.
This was last June.
Last June.
2019.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, it was crazy to me because I was completely out of it Monday.
Ugh.
By Wednesday, I was feeding myself and trying to walk again. By Saturday, they sent me home. It was like they were just ready to get rid of me.
Wow.
So, I mean, for a few weeks, I did like some mild physical therapy. It took me a little while to get my balance and my equilibrium back.
Did you go to therapy afterwards?
Yeah, I went to physical therapy. I started seeing a neurologist. And I'm still seeing the neurologist. I just had an appointment with her last week.
Okay.
There was some kind of long-term damage. I don't know what. I don't know. I know that since that has happened, my mental capacity has stopped.
Have you done an MRI?
Actually, I have one scheduled next week. They are supposed to do an MRI every 6 months to check the progression because what they found during all of this is that I have severe generalized cerebral atrophy, which is basically like an empty space at the front of my cranium, and that's what can cause seizures, fainting. It can also cause migraine. So it was like the perfect storm. It was me getting receptive. It was me not getting dialysis on top of the atrophy, and all of that was like the perfect storm to cause this to happen.
But that wasn't you. That wasn't all you.
Right.
No, it's not.
No, it wasn't. It was just this. It just everything happened
because
a certain right. Everything happened. It was like the perfect storm that would cause me to go into seizure.
Yeah.
I haven't had any seizures since, but I still have nightmares. I have what the neurologist calls like a mild form of PTSD.
And a mild
so I do still
form
have
of
nightmares. I do